This da, as they say in my part of the world, and welcome from me, Martin Smith, aka Cornish Grandad, to my YouTube channel. I trust you're well and interested in adding more to our rustic scene. Many still life painters incorporated cloth material in their scenes to add textural variety. Cézanne was particularly famous for this. Here are two of his pictures. Today, we will mimic Cézanne's work by creating a gingham red and white checkered tea towel and use the cloth physics simulator in Blender to drop it onto the table so that it forms some natural folds. Then we can bake and run the simulation to find something we really like. Once we've found a really natural looking image, we can apply that image and use it in our scene. Here's our scene. I've placed the cursor roughly where I want our cloth simulation to fall. So we're going to create a cloth. Now we could use a plane, but we need quite a lot of vertices for the cloth simulation to work. So it's actually quicker to use a grid, which is basically a subdivided plane. Let's create some vertices for X and Y, and the size, I guess, would be about 0.6 meters, 60 centimeters. Sounds about right. There we go. And we need to raise it above the table a bit so it can fall down. So currently it's about almost 3 meters off the ground. Seems like quite high, but never mind. Let's add that to 3.5, give it a bit of height. There we go. So we now have a cloth. Let's look at putting a texture material to this. So we go to shading. There's our cloth. And I'd like to thank Default Cube, who came up with the idea of using 2 wave textures at right angles to make a cloth texture. So we're going to use his idea. So let's create a new material. Let's call it tea towel. There we go. And we're going to add a wave texture. And a wave texture, as you expect, is a sinusoidal wave. Plug that into there. And you get the idea. You've got a wave pattern going across. Now we want this to be red and white bands. So if we add in a color ramp, we can put red into one of those. Okay. Now the red bands are too narrow, but if we pull in our thing, we can get them to their roughly equal width. There we go. Now, if we duplicate these two, so let's select both of them, right click, duplicate, drag that down, plug that into there, it should be identical. But if we change the axis there to Y axis, you've got ones at right angles. So, we very quickly created the basis of our material. So we just need to mix these two together. So if we do a mix RGB, drop that into there. Hey presto, we immediately have our gingham material. This couldn't be easier. So, material probably needs to be a bit rougher. I think a bit of subsurface probably works for this material, but not a lot. Still looks a bit glossy, so we probably need to add a bit of bump to this. So let's add a noise texture. And we'll connect that up to the normal. And obviously with the noise texture, we always need to put the bump in the middle between the two. And that looks a bit rough to me, so let's halve this roughness. There we go. We have a tea towel material. Let's go back to the layout mode. Now we could view this in render mode, but it's probably quicker to look at it in solid mode. So let's drop our table. So if we just rewind this, drop our tea towel, rewind this and press play, nothing's happened because we haven't actually created a cloth material yet. So let's go to our physics tab. go to cloth, hit play, and our T-tail falls, goes straight through the table, straight through the floor, and disappears out of sight. And the reason is that in this simulation you need to tell it which things are solid and it's going to collide with. So with the table selected, click collision, rewind that, press play, and it hits the table and looks like it's going to gently slide off the back end. Yes, it does. Okay, so I think we need to give this a bit more life. Probably the best way is if we give it just a bit of rotation. So it's got a bit of an angle to fall at. There we go. Let's try that. And it comes down, it hits the table, crumples up a bit, and it's still going to slide off. But it's looking very flat on the table. I think one way around this is if we add a cube for it to land on. Mesh, cube, relatively small cube, not that big, 10 centimeters, something like that. Comes down, hits, falls straight to the cube. Why? Because that needs to be a collision object. So cube selected, make that a collision object. Rewind, play it again. There we are, it's wrapping around there a bit. Is it going to fall off or not? Looks like it will. Might be able to fix that in a minute. This isn't a detailed tutorial on the cloth simulator, it's just an introduction. So we'll just use the presets. So let's look at preset for, say, silk. And you can see these are the various stiffnesses, dampings, etc. Perhaps one day we'll go through a detailed tutorial on this. We could try cotton, and you can see most of these presets change. But there's two settings that are probably quite important. One is this quality step. Now imagine that it's doing calculations and it's doing, say, one calculation every frame. Then obviously lots of things can happen between one frame and the next. We've currently got it set to 5 steps per frame. If we increase this to 10, we'll get more detailed and smoother simulation. And the other thing is that at the moment the cloth can fall through itself, but if we click self collisions on, it actually knows where every part of the cloth detail is. So let's rewind that and press play, and you'll notice something immediately. Yes, it is very, very slow, but you're getting some detail as it falls now, look, that we weren't seeing before. Now I'm going to speed up this, but it is, as you can see, running extremely slowly. So as with our fire simulation, in order to speed this up, we're going to have to bake it. It's just running too slow. So simulation start time 1, simulation end time 100, which is the same as we had here. I probably could get away with half of that, but let's leave it as it is. Let's bake that. As you can see down here, the cache is slowly increasing. Let's speed this up. What I decided to do, because it flew straight off the table, it is too much energy, so I've reduced the height to 3.2. Give it less energy. Then we'll go and delete that bake. We'll set the length to 25 because it doesn't need to be any longer, so it'll bake faster that way. And then we'll rebake that. Now that bake's finished, let's try it again. A bit less height, so hopefully got less velocity and less energy. Okay, let's see. We use the arrow keys just to step forward a bit. See, it's just bouncing off. There is a point about there, which is not a bad image. Let's have a look at that in full colour. Well, I'm sure we could do better. What I suggest you do is, I'm going to save this now and just show you how to finish this off. But if you do the same, then you can go back and you can amend some of these, perhaps change the shear or the bending, and just see if we can get it to work a bit better. But we found a frame that's okay. Let's assume that you're happy with this frame. So what I want to do is actually, we don't need the cloth to be flying through the air for the simulation. We just need it to look natural on the ground. So if you go to your modify properties stack, you do click on your apply, and that's just going to apply that. So that the cloth now sits in that position on the table. So I'll leave you to finesse it and get it just right. And when you're happy with the frame that you like, apply that and then resave your final image. Hope you've enjoyed and learnt something from this tutorial. If you have, then please support this channel by clicking subscribe. The next tutorial will give you some hints on how to add some clutter for extra realism to our scene. Keep in touch, and I hope to see you soon.